Steps to improvement. The first step to improvement is communicating effectively with others. Understanding the signals they put out, especially when they are from another culture. If the other side starts making relationship signals, they are interested in seeing whether or not they can trust you. Relationship signals include talking about non-business subjects such as recreation, sports, food, and music. They are trying to get to know you as a person. Too many people pay lip service to this. They ask a couple of questions without listening to the answer and quickly move on to business. But others can sense when you are not really interested in them, so you have to mean it. Christine Farner, a manager for Warner Lambert, a pharmaceutical company, went to County Cork, Ireland to discuss building a 275 million factory there. The local planning board was initially cool. Then Christine remembered the cultural learnings of the course, which she took at Columbia Business School. So we took them out to dinner to learn about each other. By the end of dinner, everyone was on the same team, she said, with the same agenda and a planning process. Next, you need to acknowledge differences openly. If you are different, or at least perceived as different, the extent to which you are honest about this will gain you trust and credibility. Even if the other party tells you that you should have learned more, you can apologize and say you'd like to start now. People look for honesty first. After that, start somewhere. Agree to anything, no matter how trivial. Where people will sit, what you will order for drinks. Acknowledge something you like about the other person and his or her culture. Talk about something you might have observed or read about the culture and ask if it is true. If not, what is? Be curious. Donna Farrell, a consultant formerly with Arthur Andersen, found that clients kept looking at her as a young woman. They had misgivings about her abilities and sometimes asked for someone older and more experienced. Maybe she thought they wanted to work with a man. They couldn't say it legally, but to her it felt like the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So she took the subject head-on. I addressed their perceptions about age and gender directly. Even if I didn't like their perception, she said, and used humor, I found out their fears and addressed them. Out of this established rapport. This brings me to my next point. It is as counterintuitive as it is essential for dealing with differences. Do other people expect you to be like them? When in Rome, should you do as the Romans do? The correct answer to the above question are no and no. Other people who are different from you do not expect you to be like them. They know that you are not. They do expect you to value and respect them. It is a subtle but important difference. When I go to China, I don't eat monkey brains. What's more, I have a special dietary needs. I don't wait until I have arrived to tell my hosts that after they have spent a lot of money on a ceremonial feast, I go ahead and tell them my dietary needs, and they are pleased to cook for me what I need to eat. After all, the point in cooking the meal is to make me happy. It should be of interest that cultural fatigue is not just a sociological term, it's a medical term. Cultural fatigue occurs when you have made the dozens of accommodations every day to try to be just like those around you in another culture. At the end of 6 months, you are physically exhausted. Cultural fatigue is the biggest cause of the failure of foreign executives and their families in adjusting to a new culture. The key is not to adjust. The key is to be yourself. You can learn some of the language. You can pursue some of the customs that you like. But you do not want to be like them. And this is one of the major points of this book. There is value in being different. Being different adds value. The single biggest cause of the growth of the US gross national product since the end of World War II has been new technology. New technology has been largely developed by innovators, and innovators are different. They represent change. They represent a level of discomfort as new things are tried and instituted. Many people hate change. Many people hate differences. Companies claim they love diversity and differences, but try to advocate change. And in many companies, it's one-way ticket out. Yet, it is a difference that adds value. In difference, there is strength. So if someone says to me with some frustration, we are different from each other, I'm going to slap the table and say, great, we are going to make money. Homogeneity is not as profitable. Differences are more profitable. I like to say, we have to get some people in here who disagree with us so we can make some money around here. It is the messy process of trying new things, the intensity of disagreement, the synthesis of the best ideas that lead to value. Often, mistakes are made. Feelings sometimes get hurt, but the result is more. So you want people with a different perception and solution. You do want to pay attention to the process of discussion, how you set your goals, what commitments you make to each other. Your interest in discovering one another's value. When this occurs, people get more. Research has proven these conclusions. One study looked at diversity in US cities. The three most successful cities economically, New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, were the three most diverse. Each 10% increase in diversity resulted in a rise in net income of 15% in the original US-born population. Diversity of opinion, tolerance of difference is particularly important in the high-tech sector. It is not an accident that Silicon Valley developed just outside San Francisco, which studies show tolerates the most diversity of any area of each size in the United States. To underscore this point, for this to work, the environment must support differences. In Rwanda, diversity led to ethnic genocide because differences were not tolerated. The more that differences are tolerated, indeed embraced, the more economic benefit develops. Even in countries where the choice is not total tolerance or total intolerance, the failure to capitalize on difference has economic costs. Studies show that a company's failure to capitalize on the clash of ideas and perceptions result in higher turnover, less productivity, and lower profits. The cost of extra turnover alone in a 2,000-person company in which differences are not embraced is $5 million per year right off the bottom line, studies show. This does not count the opportunity cost of losing the better ideas, its huge economic penalty. Studies show that more creativity results from the clash of differing perceptions and experiences. The most creative people are those with widely varying experiences and skills from each to group. In fact, diverse groups would produce 3 times the high-quality solutions to problems than non-diverse groups. But you need to be careful of just paying lip service to this. Someone who is different is someone with whom you will often disagree. Too many groups I have seen pick someone whose physical attributes might be different, and then pride themselves at having diversity, but unless their perceptions are different, then they are really the same, and such benefits don't flow. Here is an example of strength to differences. It ranks as one of the most rewarding experiences in my life. In the mid to late 1990s, my colleagues and I convinced 3,000 farmers in the jungle of Bolivia to stop growing coca for cocaine and to start growing bananas. These bananas were exported successfully to Argentina for several years until the value of Argentine peso dropped and the venture was no longer profitable with us in it. The growers continued on their own. The project started with a request from donor Linac, then the U.S. ambassador to Bolivia, to assist in the anti-drug campaign. She wanted to win the farmers in the jungle region of Champagne of cocaine. I had met her through work I had done there on economic development. After studying various agricultural markets, we decided there was an undersupply of high-quality bananas, and the prices that the bananas could fetch were actually more than the farmers got for their coca crop. In the drug trade, the processors and distributors made the real money, not the farmers. The government, meanwhile, kept farming coca fields, so it was risky business for the farmers. We started with 100 growers The first time we talked, it was a sweltering January night, summer in the southern hemisphere. We met in a little clearing in the jungle. It was very dark, except for the glow from my battery-operated computer and the shapes of people and animals. There was jungle around sounds. No one spoke English except for me and an interpreter. The growers spoke Quechua and Indian dialect. The interpreter translated between English and Quechua. The group, men, women, and children, were little more than array. Many looked malnourished. Barefoot children dressed in tattoos were hanging out of the two-story wooden shacks with big openings in place of windows. The skin of many was black and knit with dirt. I purposely wore a three-piece suit, a tie, and suspenders. Look at me, I began, talking to the group through the interpreter. I couldn't be more different from you. I dress differently, I talk differently, I look differently, I look different, I added. My plane ticket down here probably cost more than many of you make in a year. But I said, I think we have something in common. We both want a better life for ourselves and our children. And if we work together, we just might be able to do something together. I noted that the growers had land, cheap labors, and diseases non-producing banana trees. We had character, technology, and markets. We talked about the life they led, how they made money, their complaints against the government, their interest in better medical care. Few could read and write, yet they were interested in education, especially for their children. I told them I would need a commitment from each and every one of them that they wanted to attend this banana growing venture. For several hours that night, we negotiated a lengthy contract. I typed it in English, and then the translator typed in Spanish. Almost all of the growers were illiterate, but they weren't stupid. They asked very good questions and wanted all the terms one might expect in such a contract. It was subject to the laws of New York State. We negotiated each and every point respectfully and thoughtfully. I would invest money in equipment, trucking, marketing technology, and chemicals for the bananas. The growers would be guaranteed a certain price. They would commit to achieving certain production numbers. They promised to learn world-class banana production method, and we promised to bring in the people to teach them. They might make less money in some weeks than they would with coca. I told them, but we would form a brand that would have value, and over the long term they would get more. I noted to them that on the Bolivian road, it was easier to get out of contracts for various technicalities. But on the New York law, I said, if there is a meeting of the minds, there is an agreement. So I said, when you put your names on the contract or an X next to your name, which who keeps each commitment, you have to mean it. We finished about done, there was nowhere to print out the contract since there was an electricity. So the two growers who could read and write and we spoke Spanish drove the 350 kilometers, about 200 miles, with us back to Santa Cruz, Bolivia's commercial hub, where we printed out the contract and signed it. In the years to follow, the contact with the Bolivians withstood the test of time and distance. This is because we had openly discussed our differences and how we could work together. We came from two dramatically different cultures, but we had similar goals. Our agreement was first with Europeans. This was a good start, but I didn't think it was enough to form the kind of long-term bond I sought. So we went back frequently and took tours through the jungles. I wanted to understand their customs and how they lived. Then we hit on an idea. The US and Bolivian government, which supported the project, wanted the growers to open a bank account to hold their money. A cash economy, they figured, is a drug economy. So the agency involved set the growers up with a bank account at the Bank of Santa Cruz, a regional bank located in the city. But I wanted to value the growers more. The best bank in the country was the city bank in Santa Cruz. The best department at that bank was the corporate department. Companies like Mercedes banked there. The setting was elegant and quiet, with big blue carpets. You could hear the soft whoosh of air conditioning. There was strict financial and corporate requirement. The growers hardly had 2 pesos to rub together. Nonetheless, we asked the Citibank corporate department to make an exception for the growers. Absolutely not, the head of the corporate department said, insulted that we even asked the question. So we used all of our various contracts, including political ones, to prevail upon Citibank to accept the growers as depositors. This was a highly visible project, and Citibank, a major US, was being asked to do something for Bolivia. They agreed. Imagine this scene. A ragtag group of growers walking through the luxurious, appointed corporate banking department, where everyone else was dressed to the teeth in business suits and dresses. Imagine these growers getting their own Citibank card, their very first banking card and checkbook. And imagine the growers coming back to their shops in the jungle, holding up their Citibank card and saying to each other, "We are as good as Mercedes." A couple of years after we signed the contract, there was a big transportation strike. The road through Chapel, the jungle, was one of the country's principal transportation corridors. Only one truck was let through, our banana truck. We took leaders of the growers to one of the best restaurants in Santa Cruz, white tablecloth and a hike. The, they came in by bus from the jungle. We had them take back delicacies for their families. Others in the restaurant looked askance at them, but they were with us, and the restaurant could hardly afford to make a cent. The number of growers in our project grew quickly and steadily. After 6 months, we had 3,000 growers from all over the jungle. The project became known in Bolivia. Protests by some coca growers were overwhelmed by people turning to bananas. But the biggest change occurred with the banana themselves. The region, the project, had never been moved forward because the banana trees in that part of the jungle were diseased. They had a fungus called black tor, which caused the level of banana trees to droop, exposing them to the top. The banana ripens on the tree, turning back, which makes them unstable, unusable. The trees needed to be sprayed several times a day, part of their yearly growing cycle, with the fungicide to kill the fungus. But it was too expensive to fly aircraft the 350 kilometers back and forth from Santa Cruz every day to spray the trees several times. As a result, the banana business had never gotten off the ground. However, there was a small military airport in the middle of Chapel, with the small crop spraying planes parked at the airport and used it as a base. The chemicals and fuels could be trucked in from Santa Cruz. The airport was owned by the National Aeronautical Association, a joint effort by the US and the Bolivian military. For 20 years, they had refused requests from the growers to open the airport to agricultural projects to grow something other than coca. So we decided to use the negotiation tools outlined in this book to make our case, standards, framing, third parties, and goals. I wrote a letter to the US Department of State, Justice, and the Treasury, the three departments that dealt with the illegal drug trade. This letter essentially asked them if their actions were consistent with their goals and it used their standards. The letter said that if the airport remained closed, it showed that the US government supported the illegal drug trade. But if the airport was opened to the growers, it would show that the government opposed illegal drugs, not just in word but in deed. Again, we got assistance from both the Bolivian and the US government to help get our request to the right people. At the same time, Alexa Sundberg, a US marketing consultant, and Andres Chuda, a Bolivian economist, worked for me on the ground and put pressure on politicians, pastors in the media, and organized the Pilots Association to join in the pressure. The airport was opened. US and Bolivian agencies appropriated $100,000 to build a new commercial airstrip next to the military landing field in the heart of banana plantations. We brought in technology from Ecuador to grow better bananas. We brought in new refrigeration and washing equipment. We found markets in Argentina. Our food label, Andean wood, became a fixture in some of the Argentine supermarkets. The high prices the bananas fetched in Argentina showed that the Indians of Chapel were competing with the world's best banana producers. Some months after the project started, banana prices dropped for a brief period. I was sure we could go into the red that month, but when I got the accounting reports, we were still in the black. The project was still making money. I didn't understand this, so I called out to the people who were handling our finances in Bolivia and asked them why we are not in the red that month. Oh, one of them said, the growers saw the market prices drop and they didn't want you to lose money. So they decided to drop their prices to you until the market recovers. These are people who one would think I had nothing in common with. I didn't speak their language. I didn't understand their customs, but we made a connection across time, space, and culture that endures to this day. Does this happen 100% of the time? Of course not, but it happens a surprisingly high percentage of the time if you go through the process. Communication, perception, and culture. Clearly, the way in which we communicate with people from other cultures is key. The way we interpret their actions. The question we ask about their perception. When you think everyone else perceives the world just like we do, it causes all kinds of conflict. One of the most interesting studies about this had to do with the misinterpretation of a smile. It was conducted on a college campus. Two Americans passed each other on a walkway and smiled at each other. Both felt good about this. Then an American passed a Korean student. The American smiled, the Korean student did not. The Korean student thought these Americans are so superficial. All they do is smile, even as strangers. It means nothing to them. The American student thought these Koreans are so unfriendly. An Arab student walked along a path in traditional garb, wearing a white flowing robe. People smiled at him in approval, but he felt only ridicule, because that's what smiling means in some Arab cultures in such a context. He quickly ran into the bathroom to check how he looked. But the most interesting part of this research concerned an American woman and a South Asian man. The female student was waiting for the off-campus bus to take her to her apartment after class early one evening. A man from Southeast Asia was tending to his two small children. The young American woman was touched and smiled at the man. The man, suddenly bewildered, looked back at her and said, "Oh, do you want to meet later? How much do you cost?" He thought she was selling her services. If just a smile can be the basis for such misunderstanding, think of the peoples in the blizzard or sentences in a complex or emotional negotiation. The process to solve cross-cultural issues is the same as for other negotiation problems, although the perceptual differences are larger, so it usually takes more time. The key, of course, is to start with the picture in their heads, no matter how alien these pictures seem. And you need to move incrementally. Across cultures, you often have to cross vast distances. Divide the negotiation into small steps. Take the steps one at a time. If they work, shorten the steps. When you are trying to bring someone a larger distance, it's hard to do it without being very visual. They actually have to see it, both in their mind and with their eyes. Without the actual experience, it's very hard to change their perception. That's why this book is big on role reversal. For most people, you actually have to put them in the sand. If they think they have someone, you need to get them to spend time with that person. If they hate a culture, you need to find a way to have a positive experience with the culture. It makes no sense to give them data, to argue with them, to increase benefits that might not matter as much. Salary, for example. Give them a picture, spark their imagination, strike a chord they can feel.